Hello and welcome back to Attacking Third. Let's do this. I'm Sandra Herrera, back in the host seat alongside Jess McDonald, Jen Beattie. I'm so hyped for this episode because we are putting a little bit of a bookend on the international window. We're going to chat a little bit about the international window's impact on the domestic season because NWSL is officially back. We've got games of the week. We're going to chat a little bit about what's on the line for the lower half of the table. And we're bringing back the mailbag. So, of course, we wanted to give folks an opportunity to field us some questions and maybe we'll have some fun with that along the way. And if you're joining us, we want to thank you for joining us on Attacking Third. Whether you're joining us live, hello to the chat on YouTube, tap in, have a lot of fun. Feel free to get things going there. If you're watching us on Golazo Network or if you're listening as a podcast, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're just happy that you're here. And a quick reminder, Attacking Third is now on every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. ET and every Sunday throughout the NWSL season. We're going to be going live after the final whistle of the last match on the NWSL schedule to discuss our biggest takeaways from the weekend that was. And I'm thrilled because we actually get to read that promo a little bit. And it's true because NWSL is back. We had an international break. We've got to talk about a few of those things here. Couldn't do it alone. So happy to be back with you both. Jen, how you been?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be back. Let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, I know you and I have been doing these a little bit more often. It's always lovely to work with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, likewise, my friend. I'm doing good. Just at the tail end of this pregnancy. Y'all pray for me, please.
Yeah.
I'm
I
tired.
always gotta
I'm
check in with you,
uncomfortable.
girl. I'm always
Yeah.
like, I got to make sure you're doing all right. I appreciate you so much being here. But look, soccer doesn't stop, right? Even for you, you gotta hop on and talk about it sometimes, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a break in your day to just sort of get in with your homies and
It
talk
really
about
does.
the game. Let's get into it then. Let's go ahead and get into it. We are coming off of the April international window. We wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of this international window domestically. And because even though we have a lot of fun and we do preview episodes, recap episodes for USWNT windows and the opposition that they go up against, it's not just them and their opposition that are playing during these windows. No. It's a global international window for FIFA. So there's all kinds of teams going head to head. We saw some results for UEFA Women's Nations League. There were some surprises there along the way. I got to shout out Mexico because they picked up a couple dubs against Jamaica. Canada struggling a little bit, got dropped a narrow game to Argentina. So there's stuff that happens all the time during an international window, despite us focusing a lot on the United States women's national team. And something else that obviously happens during these windows is we get a look at players performing at these highest levels, the international level, right? But a lot of them are attached to their domestic side as well. And that's also where we analyze and critique and talk about the game. So as far as this specific window, we wanted to narrow things in on April because it's just an interesting time in the calendar in general for players who are finding themselves either in North America playing in NWSL just 3 weeks in, or in Europe balancing some different phases of their season as well. Jen, I'd like to go to you with this because on the European side of things, I'd like you to maybe give us a glimpse of balancing those things across the pond, because there's things like Champions League outside of nations things. There's alongside a domestic club season that players maybe find themselves navigating a preseason with that. What is the mental switch there, if any, in kind of having to say, all right, here we are, here's this opportunity, I got to try to make the best of it. What are the ways in which you find yourself as a player kind of managing these windows?
Yeah, it's so interesting because you can look at so many different windows, right? But this April one specifically, I think in the men's game, there was so much conversation around it because it's crunch time. It's crunch time in the domestic league. You're playing for trophies. If you're in the top end of the table, you could be coming back ready for semi-finals of the Champions League, playing for an FA Cup final and chasing a trophy in your domestic season. So it's the most important time. So you have to have that mental switch, like exactly what you just said. if I play for Scotland or Spain or I'm in the Nations League, I'm either, if I did play for Scotland, I don't have a Euros summer tournament coming up because I haven't qualified, or I'm prepping for a major summer tournament. So I have these both things that are huge to manage, and you flip that onto NWSL, which Jess, you could go on to talk about, but for in terms of European football, it's crunch time. You're thinking, how do I manage this? It's so hard, especially the older you get and you're managing, niggles and that switch of, I just want to be physically peaking at the right time. So it's so hard to do that extra travel, to go abroad, travel in games that, we talk about the stake of games. Am I prepping for a Euros, or is this a friendly, or is this Nations League? Obviously, playing for your national team is the biggest honor anyone can ever have. So you're always going to be switched on. But I always found it, I personally loved it. I loved that switch of going from club to country, and it was an absolute honor. I loved it, constantly packing and unpacking. And don't get me wrong, it got tiring towards the end of my Scotland career, but I loved it. But the mental switch is definitely the hardest one, to go from, having to peak at the crunch end of your season to go and play for a national team, whether you're prepping for a tournament or not, is really difficult. And that's where management comes in, and coaching and resources and staff and relying on your teammates, bouncing off ideas. It's all huge. But yeah, domestically in European game right now, the April window specifically is really, really difficult.
I have a follow for you on that, because you're touching on the management part of it, whether it's yourself as a player, the mentals, the physical angles in rehab on that, but also the literal managing part, like the coaching staff and where they come into play. The travel, I have to imagine, is also one of those both mental and physical switches that you kind of have to tap into. What is there like any hack, or is it just like, is it more mental or is it more physical that you have to manage, or does it depend on the type of window?
Oh, it's for sure both. I'll never forget, even you'd finish a game on a Sunday playing at the weekend, and then literally you'd be showering, take off that tracksuit and put on the Scotland one. And that was kind of that process that was just that was that mental switch. And that came from, and don't get me wrong as well, every nation has different resources, right? Of how travel is, how good the flight time is, how far you're having to travel. I think resources come down to it massively with the kind of support that you're given. But I don't know. I feel like I kind of came from an amateur side of the game where we had nothing. So come the end, I was so grateful for any support and any resource. But there's definitely both. I feel like that Monday when you came into camp, it was very much, if you'd played 90 minutes at the weekend, it was focus on recovery. It was like what you're sleeping, what are you eating, are you in the leg pumps? Are you doing all the ice baths? Are you doing, are you on the pitch doing active recovery? It was very much how it was suited to you. And I loved that when management came in and totally understood that. We're like, how are you feeling? That was the best thing that anyone could ever ask. How are you feeling individually? What do you want to do? How is this week going to be the best for you? So those open-ended conversations were always the best thing for me as a player.
Jess, I can't help but think, like, we're coming off of an international window for the U.S. women's national team where they split the series against Brazil. There was a positive start and maybe a questionable finish out of that window. And I can't look, I'm tapping into the coverage side of my brain here. I can't help but always recall, whenever we are coming in and out of these windows and you and I get a chance to work together, about maybe some of this balancing act a little bit, because for you, part of that epic 2019 World Cup team and this line that was drawn between club and country, because I'll just go ahead and remind everybody who can't remember anything before 2020, but the NC Courage were running it, ruling the NWSL 100%. And you could draw these direct lines from players who found their opportunities in those U.S. women's national team camps to the performances that they were putting together week in and week out in NWSL. You, Jess McDonald, with Lynn Williams, now Bayandula, finding herself constantly in these camps in the build up to a World Cup. Sam Mewis was a staple. Crystal Dunn. Like there's so many players and facets that you can go through. So it's almost like Jen touched a little bit on the resources and the difference in things there, but it's almost like you had one high stakes, high pressure situation where it was deeply competitive for club, just going into another, but this time it's for international play. So for you in windows like this, was there ever really a switch that turned off?
Never. it never turned off. It was such a whirlwind. And, I came in with the USA team at an older age than people normally do. Everyone gets their start at, their first camp, late teens, early 20s. No, Mama was 29 years old when I was in my first camp. And so the only mental switch that was really tough for me going from Courage to the USA team, because it was such a crazy whirlwind, in 2018, because we know we're prepping for the World Cup. 2019 was just nuts. It was just a blur. But the most mentally challenging thing for me was the fact that, I was a single mom and my son was in school full time when I was doing all of this travel with the USA team preparing for the World Cup. I was gone from October 2018 all the way through July 7th, which was the World Cup final of 2019, between 2 to 6 weeks every month. And, the mentally challenging part for me was just leaving my kid behind, even though, I have to give the national team credit just because they do support moms. If we needed nannies during camp, they provided and things like that. They welcomed kids into camp, but I couldn't bring mine because mine was in school full time. So obviously you can't just sit here and miss all of second and third grade, and I'm no teacher. COVID wrecked me. I have so much respect for teachers after that doing homeschooling thing. It's not my thing. I'm such a jock, you guys. But so I had to leave them behind with my North Carolina family. And when things have ever gotten rough in my life or in my playing career, the thing that brought me joy every single day was my kid, because he would walk in the door from school, or I'd pick him up from school, whatever the case may be. And he would just get so happy just to see me, Mom, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm good. I could have had a crap training that day, and I'm going home, or we lost in rondos or 5v5. That's how my, practice ended. And I'm angry because my team lost, and I'm like, I played like crap or whatever. But I get to go home to just like this joyful little human. But to not have had that with the USA team was very mentally challenging for me, because that was my reset switch, was my kid. And so for me to not have him in camp, that was really rough. And that was a sacrifice that, I had to take, and in order to, make my dream come true. But honestly, there was no off switch going from club to country. Cause I mean, we're going to, club most intense training environment to country, which was just as intense. So I guess they both just prepared us for both. We had Abby Dahlkemper, Sam Mewis, Crystal Dunn, Dabinia. I mean, our team was just nuts at the time. And so being able to transition both, that was an easy switch, I guess you could say. But what was rough for me is just missing out on time with my kid, basically.
How did you adapt to that, Jess? Because I can only imagine you have your reset, which is your kid, and that's unbelievable. Everyone needs that grounding moment as an athlete, right? To help them through those really tough moments when, like you're saying, that 5v5 where you're leaving the game or leaving the training annoyed, and having that grounding, going away in national team. How did you adapt to that? Because if you not having your kid there is so difficult. What was your other way of kind of navigating that?
Oh, let me tell you. And I hope she's okay with me mentioning her name, and I hope I don't get emotional right now. So I was cool for first 6 months going into camp, being away from my kid. Like, this is my ticket. This is my chance of making the World Cup team. I'm not allocated. I'm not contracted. I have a chip on my shoulder because I'm the only mom on the team. So like this pressure, I was embracing it. But then there was this one day where we were in Tottenham for about 3 weeks or so. We were at their facilities, the men's Tottenham facilities, which was dope. It was just soccer world, soccer heaven. And we went there to get away from the public and just be private, train. And then we're heading to France after for the World Cup. There was one, I will never forget this day. There was one training where not a single pass, not a single touch, nothing was going my way. Jen, I know you can back me up on this. Like, yeah. And I'm trying, you know, and then I had one teammate who was on my team that whole training session who was just, come on, Jess, and like just negative talk. And, you know, we're our own biggest critics. And I'm just like, I'm trying so hard not to get emotional. And this was my test mentally. Like the first day where I was like really tested mentally, and training's over with, and I'm holding back tears because at this point in time, like I felt a little isolated because I'm just like, I know I was trashed today, you know? And so everyone goes to shower. We have team meal. I go straight to my phone and I call my North Carolina mom. I mean, just, you know, very well educated woman. She always gives good feedback. She's also a mom, you know, and so I called her and I'm bawling, crying on the phone. I'm telling her what happened, how I'm feeling. And so this is, I guess, a part of my reset. And so I'm just spilling all my emotions out. So she gives me good feedback. And then I'm thinking I'm standing outside in a private area because I knew everyone went inside. So everyone's getting their meals and showering, but I'm outside, like in a nice little private area. I'm on the phone. I look over my left shoulder. I'll never forget. I see Kristen Press walking right behind me with a bag of balls. I didn't even know she stayed behind. And I know she saw me. You know, you want to do these things in private. You don't want to, you know, show your weakness. And so I'm losing it. And I'm like, gosh, man, I wanted privacy. I guess I should have gone to my room, honestly. But, you know, I just went back outside, fresh air, hang up the phone, go back in, I shower, go into the meal room. And she came up to me, Kristen Press came up to me, and she just gave me this long, big hug. It was just a long hug. She said nothing. And she just looked at me and smiled, and she walked away. And I was like, oh, I'm good. Yeah. Okay. That was like all I needed. You know, sometimes you just need a hug, you know, and I didn't even know it, you know? And so just like that was my reset. And so that was when I really realized, because I'm the new kid on the block, even though I'm older on the team, I was still new. And knowing I had teammates there for me when, you know, I didn't ask or, you know, things like that. So it was really the team who kept me together, honestly, you know, and that just lets you know the characters and the human beings that they truly are, you know. And so that's a moment. And I don't even think I thanked her, you know, for that hug, like how much that actually like changed my whole mood. Just, you know, it was just a reset for me. And I'm like, dang, all I needed was a hug. And so my teammates were just there. So that was my reset moving forward. You know, when we had difficult times, there was always a teammate there. And I'm like, yes, okay, we're in this shit together, you know.
Love it. No. Shout out France. Shout out France.
Yeah. Look, I think you made us all a little bit emotional there, but stemming off of that a little bit, whether it's like a super high pressure cooker like an international window, or maybe preseason versus like preseason for club, I'd like to ask you both, because part of what happens within these bubbles is that you've talked about it already, Jess. You're going head to head. You are in these scenarios where you are in direct competition with people that you also look at and say, call teammate. And it's a complex dynamics at times, I'm sure, that you have to navigate. So I guess, Jen, for you, like when you find yourself as a player balancing both club and country, because not every player gets the opportunity to do that. How, what kind of switch is that you turn on and off? Because maybe there are instances in your case where you go and then all of a sudden you turn into fierce competitors, and then maybe you go back and your teammates for club.
For sure.
What's that shift in dynamic like?
Yeah, so that's honestly such an interesting one as well. I think the closest thing for me to that was, so say playing teammates for Scotland with the likes of Aaron Cuthbert, right? Big midfielder for Chelsea, and then have to play against them at the weekend in a cup final, or, you know, an Arsenal versus Chelsea, or worse, having just played them and either won or lost, and then having to come into camp and be teammates. So you've gone from being competitors. But the thing I love so much about Scotland is sense of humor. It was always covered with sense of humor. The humility of that grounding moment, coming in and putting on a Scotland shirt. You're automatic mates. That's what I miss the most of being part of a national team, is, you know, coming together with a group of people that you pretty much grew up with. And of course, when you play against them, of course I want to beat them. Of course I want to absolutely pump them 3-0 every single time. But when you put on that Scotland jersey, man, there's nothing more grounding than meeting up with people from your nation, your home country. All that is put to bed. You're competing for each other now. You're competing for Scotland to win a game, to make major tournaments, go and play in the highest level. So yeah, I found that switch, I'm going to be honest, pretty straightforward. For me, it was okay to, you know, I want to beat you at the weekend playing against each other for clubs, but when we come together and play for Scotland, I want to win for Scotland. And it was very much, I think we all knew we're professionals, we're competitive, and whatever environment we're in, we can switch for that. And I think that was what mattered most. I loved that about, you know, and I felt the same. I felt it back from my teammates as well, you know, it was always grounded in banter, I would say. And that's credit to Scotland national team and how fun it was. And, you know, we worked so hard to win every single game we possibly could. But yeah, the switch for me was okay. I loved it. I loved meeting up. I miss it so much, meeting up with the Scotland team. It was awesome.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love it. Thank you both for sharing so many of these like personal facets of your own experiences navigating these kind of windows. But listen, I'd like to close things out here, but we have a little bit of other international news that dropped as well that I'd like to get both of your thoughts on, because the 2028 Olympic Games are literally right around the corner. We've heard so much throughout this international window and others that are going to be buildups to that next cycle for the 27 World Cup and the 28 Olympics. And the Olympics announced that for the first time in Olympic history, soccer will have more women's teams than the men's competition within the Olympic Games. They are going to expand from 12 to 16 teams, while the men will still be competing with 12. So come 2028, there's going to be 4 additional teams joining the Olympics. I saw some celebrations there, Jess. This is good news, happy news. We like this.
Heck yeah, man. Women's sports right now in general, it's booming. You know, it's on this incredible incline here. Whereas like men, it's like, okay, we know what to expect, but just to give women more of an opportunity, putting more teams in, it's dope. You know, we got more teams at the last World Cup, which was awesome. Now we're getting more at the Olympics. It's so much well-deserved. I mean, the fan base is absolutely outrageous now. And it was something I never dreamt of when, you know, I was just rookie and I was playing for Chicago Red Stars in the WPS, you know, it was like a little mini D2 college with about 30 people. And that was mostly our families that were in the stands to this, you know. Now stadiums are selling out, you know, and just the support has been nothing short of amazing over the history of women's sports and especially women's football globally. So I'm here for it. I'm excited. I'm at the edge of my seat for it. I'm sweating right now, so because I'm so excited.
No, 100%. I love it because it's like we're eventually gonna see that World Cup also balloon in a crazy way with a ton of teams. But something that makes the Olympics so unique and special is how difficult it is to go out and not only reach that podium but win that gold medal. And there's a reason why, like in the World Cup, you can only point to a number of teams who have been able to have that honor in winning those gold medal, whether it's USA or Canada or Germany. So it's still going to be, I think, that type of competition that will still kind of carry that title, where you ask the athlete and say, oh, which one do you find more complex or tougher? And we hear from athletes all the time who have played in both, and they're like, the Olympics are an absolute gauntlet. And I think even with the addition of 4 teams, we're still going to maybe hear a little bit of that just because of scheduling and things like that. So congratulations to the Olympics for taking note, wanting to expand teams into this next coming window of tournament. We're going to take this book and officially close the April international window. We're going to put it on the shelf because the NWSL is back and we've got to chat all about it. Stick with us. We'll be back right after a quick break. We're back, and so is the NWSL regular season, and we're going to touch on a couple games of the week. We've got some matches that we're keeping an eye on, and in these games, we might be touching on clubs who are flirting with disaster, ? I don't know. Maybe that's harsh framing. We'll talk about it, though, because something that to bridge that international discussion with the return of NWSL is that the timing of this windows comes when it was a pause just 3 weeks in to the regular season. So some teams have obviously found themselves clicking and cooking already. They don't seem to have a worry in the world. They are going to continue to navigate and operate things moving forward. But there are some teams that find themselves very early in this season, maybe in a position that they didn't anticipate themselves in, especially for teams that perhaps had successful seasons in 2024. We've got Gotham FC and North Carolina Courage on the docket this weekend. You could find this game on Paramount Plus, so make sure to tune in. This is a very unique head-to-head because these are two teams I think that we can sort of agree that they look to be in a good position throughout their offseason heading into the start of this regular season. But right now, these are two teams who are going to go head-to-head against each other, who both only have managed to gain 2 points over 3 weeks. Jess, in this game, does it feel like a little bit of a high-pressure situation? And who has more to lose or gain here in this matchup?
Yeah, high pressure, absolutely, because these are two, very dominating clubs in the history of these clubs. There's always been these high expectations for them. And so now both have lost a lot of players, rosters looking a little different. And sometimes that happens. So, ownerships, coaches, they got to work with what they have. But what does that look like going into this weekend's game? Pressure? Absolutely. Just because stakes are high at this point. And once you start the season, every game counts points-wise, whether if you're on the road or you're at home. You need to gain something. So for either team to gain something, because, they need the points at this point. But only thing we can expect right now from these two teams is a great defense. Defensively, both of these teams are so dominant. But who's going to be scoring the goals for these teams? That's the biggest question mark. So will it be a good game? Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a battle of the midfield, maybe, because both midfields are absolutely phenomenal. But at the end of the day, I'm like, man, courage. Y'all need a 9. Y'all need someone to hold up play, someone to get in behind, just a natural 9. Y'all need like a Chawinga, a Banda, a Lynn,
Those are huge
Biandolo,
names.
I'm like, I could drop
Just go get one of them. Like, like they're just falling off of trees.
Exactly. So in Gotham, same thing. Esther, she's great with hold up play. Ella Stevens has been phenomenal, but there's a little bit more in that final third that they're missing. And the same thing is with the courage, because I think, you look at these rosters, you look at who's been starting for both of these clubs, they look stacked. But then you look at that final third line, and it's like, okay, well, there's the biggest question mark. And so I think that's both of these clubs' biggest issues, because everywhere else on the field, from goalkeeper on up to the midfield, it's looking pretty crispy. But moving forward, who's going to be scoring goals? So that's going to be the biggest question mark going into this weekend.
I think that's a fair big question for both of the clubs in terms of like what's working and what's not. Like, yeah, who's going to get that ball in the back of the net? Because this is regular season. So maybe, just maybe, this is a game where neither of them lose, right? They have to settle for another one of these good old-fashioned draws. And then that question still remains, right? So I think that's a totally fair one to present for these two. Jen, for this game, I'm curious for two teams that were 2024 postseason teams and pretty higher up. Gotham ended out as a third seed in 2024. The Courage locked up that 5th seed, and because of that, you give them a grace, and you say they're going to go ahead and be competitive in 2025. But now they find themselves in this scenario where they're still sort of trying to figure things out. Is it too early to say that they're flirting with disaster, or how deep of a hole is it to dig yourself out of? And I'm curious of your perspective on this, because you've had to manage seasons in different leagues, and you have this experience of knowing when it does feel urgent versus it's early, we can kind of just continue with our plans here. Does any of that come into play with these two teams going head to head this weekend?
I think it comes into play with these two teams specifically because of how close we have them on a par, right? They're seated in similar rankings, similar success in the past, but so I think that's why we'll put a lot of expectation. I think whoever loses this game, maybe our expectations will change of how their season's going to go, because I think it's a close head to head. Let's be honest, in terms of their start so far, the expectation we already have. But I think Jess is spot on. It's going to be a close game in terms of midfield and defense. Both teams want to dominate the ball. Who's going to get the goals? When I look at Gotham, the experience that they let go of with Dunn leaving, Lynn leaving, Lavelle out injured, I'm like, who's going to step into this team and really rally them through a difficult start? I think, of course, the narrative around any team at this point in the season is always going to be, okay, momentum, consistency, we're going to get that somehow. It's early. There's still so much of the season left to be played. But how long before you're thinking, right, we need 3 points here? And I think this weekend, especially when it's a head-to-head of a similar ranked team, this is a huge game for both teams, because you have to start peeling away from the bottom of the ladder. And I think week 4, that's starting to creep into, we're leaving it too late now. Okay, you can give yourself grace for the first couple of games, but after that, I'm thinking if I'm in either of those teams, 3 points is 100% necessary in this weekend.
So that's the question. Who's going to be that player? So maybe we'll break it down into both teams. I'll go to Gotham for you, Jen. Who is going to be that player? If that's the ultimate question, who's going to be the player to, take that game, take the team by the scruff of the neck and say, come on, y'all, let's go. Yeah. Who is that for you, for Gotham?
For me, it's got to be Sonnet. I'm thinking, you've just captained national team. You're most experienced player in that team we just saw play against Brazil. Very young team for Gotham. It was a very young team for the US national team. You know what that's like. You would have had to be a leader in that situation. I think if I'm in those shoes, I'm taking that back to club. I'm thinking, right, we have to rally. We have to win this game at the weekend. And for me, when I watch her play, she's always so vocal, always talking. She's always communicating. And I'm thinking, I'm always biased as center back, right? Like you see the whole field. You want to sort of lead from the back. And for me, she's that kind of player that I think we'll see step up and has done multiple occasions, right? But I think when you've done it for the national team and you've captained and bring that back to club, your club needs you at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Jess, who does it have to be for the Courage at this point?
Yeah, I got to go with the little beast, Denise O'Sullivan. That's what she is. Nice. This girl's a beast. I almost call her the Shaquille O'Neal of women's soccer. And I think she's honestly one of those players where I've had the privilege of playing with her. You see this woman go into a tackle, and it's like LFG, like let's go. And so she brings so much leadership, even on the field. She's able to maneuver her players in and around her. Hey, you drop here. You drop here. I need you to press there. These are the pressure pockets. And so I think when she comes from international break and being able to transition that leadership into club, I think she's got it. But it's all about everybody being bought in and being on board on what they need to do in order to be successful, because it can't just come from the coaches. It also has to come from your teammates, your leader. And so I think Denise O'Sullivan really brings that. But yeah, if we're talking about game changers too, football wise, I mean, Ashley Sanchez, boy, that girl, she doesn't let off the brakes. I know you said to name one player, but the most vocal, Denise O'Sullivan. But if you're looking at a quiet, amazing player on the ball, boy, that Ashley Sanchez just sambos on the ball. And she could change the game like that when it comes to her play.
Maybe that's a positive sign for the Courage, that you're like, okay, I can actually think of a couple. So, but it's also something that can go both ways. You're just like looking at a team that has talent on it, and you're like, one of you, yeah, please do this. But I like that you mentioned, both of you mentioned kind of more veteran-esque players to kind of start. You're looking to the leadership and the experience on both of these teams to kind of lead the way. Maybe I'll go the other direction. Shaw's coming off of an international window where, unfortunately, we didn't see her get a lot of time, with this U.S. women's national team camp. Maybe there is a conversation there for both coaching staffs, USA and the Courage, to say, this is your focus right now. This is where you have to get better. This is the place where you are going to continue to develop. And maybe that's the switch. Allowing a young player like her to just focus on performance for club will eventually sort of kind of get things rolling. And I think for Gotham, maybe the new arrival in Portillo. She's coming out of an international window herself. This is a new acquisition for them. Her first year with Gotham. Would love to see her get back on the scoreboard for Gotham as well. We've got another matchup here on the horizon. You can also watch on Paramount Plus. It's Bay FC versus Chicago Stars FC. And again, we're talking about teams in interesting positions, maybe lower half of the table. And Bay FC find themselves, they're the line. Bay FC are the line right now. They are literally smack dab in the middle of that table. Perhaps maybe could be considered even a bubble team at this point. For me, the biggest question I'm asking for Bay FC is, where's the consistency? Because that's what I want to see. That was my biggest question for Bay FC going into 2025 that I wanted to see from them. We talked a little bit about the little bit of grace that you give in the beginning of the season. And I think for Bay FC last year as an inaugural team, you get a bit of that grace as well. You're trying to figure things out. They're all new pieces trying to fit together and navigate a long regular season. But they did something special at the second half of the season. It was really cool to see Bay FC kind of get it together a little bit, make that playoff push, Jen. So I'm going to go to you with this because you had a front row seat to this. I wanted to see them build on that. I wanted to say, okay, they got enough here in this second half of 2024 to maybe ride off into 2025. Surely this Bay FC side will put together 90-minute performances and do it consistently. But I don't know if I'm convinced I've seen that enough. Where does that consistency come from for Bay FC?
Yeah, I mean, awesome question again. I was looking at, the feeling that I had at the start of last season for Bay. It was very up and down, right? We got off to a flyer against Angel City, got the win away from home. We're like, all right, okay, we're off to a flyer, and then struggled to pick up points after that. And this season kind of feels a little bit similar. But if you're asking about consistency, I honestly think when you're changing formation and you're changing personnel early on in a season, that's hard to get consistency as a player in that position, you know, at the opening few games to change pretty key things, whether it comes down to injuries or niggles, you never know, right? Whether it's selection, but I'm looking at Ashwala on the bench, gone to a back 5 to a back 4, and that kind of big changes. When you're talking about formation, you want consistency as a player. And I know you can't start the same 11, the season's long, and, you know, use your squad, use your depth, but consistency is the key word that I've heard and read in the media over the past few weeks about Bay. And I feel like when you're looking at rotations and formation changes, they're the hardest things as players to adapt to. I think make those changes further into the season when you've picked up points consistently and you want to, you know, adapt to what a press is going to do against you, or you want to change the way you press or build up based on formation. But I think right now try and maybe keep that a little consistent. That's just my perspective from a player of how I would feel in those shoes. If I was still, I'd be like, okay, I know we're training this way this week because this is how we're going to play on the weekend. And that comes from consistency.
On paper, just on paper, when we're looking at Bay going up against Stars, you take a look at these two teams and the way they've gotten their start to the season, and maybe you say Bay FC has a real opportunity here. Because, Jess, I'm going to you with this because you were on the call for Chicago's game against Louisville. Tough day out of the office, and that was just one tough day because they've had three weeks of tough days in the office at this point. And I can't help but think when you look at that, just bare minimum, this team versus that team, players talk about this all this time. You get amped up about that. You look at the other team across the way and you say, that is a team we're going to go out and we're going to take it to. So for Chicago, is there any hope? When is this a game where they can maybe get their first point of the season? What does this team have to do to try to turn things around? Do you think they will have utilized this break in the window to try to start to correct the course of this ship?
Sandra, my hormones are too high for this question right now. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you. You know, I was color analyst for this game for Fox Chicago against Louisville. Yeah. And I have friends on Chicago Stars, really, really close friends. And Alyssa Nair, possibly her last season. This ain't the way I want her career to end. This ain't it. They have no identity. They have poor leadership when it comes to field players. What's the coach doing? They go long when they should go short. They go short when they should go long. A lot of unforced errors from the back line. Just, you look at Bay FC, at least you can see what they're trying to do. And, you know, sometimes they don't get that done. You know, that's Bay FC's, you know, issue, but you can see what they're trying to do. Chicago, we don't know what they're trying to do. What y'all doing? Just, where are the pressure pockets? You know, there's just this huge question mark. Like, look, okay, last season, you should have learned from it. Lauren Donaldson, what you doing, man? Because you transitioned last season into this season, and I just see a whole lot of nothing from Chicago, sadly, and it makes me so angry. I feel bad for these women because there should be more for them. You know, they get new ownership, they hit this reset button, they have Toyota Park, you know, to themselves. SeatGeek. I'm so used to Toyota Park. SeatGeek Stadium to themselves. Like they've got the whole setup. All right. Now, can we brainstorm to see what the issue is? Lauren, what you doing? Because this ain't it. You know, we all rooted for him coming off from Jamaican's national team at the World Cup. It's like, okay, defensively, they brought some game. They had no one scoring. And I would say it's the same thing for Chicago Stars, but the defending is just as atrocious. And so there's no protection for the goalkeeper. There's no one taking charge on the field. And so this is where you question the coaching staff. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, Lauren, what's going on here? Because this ain't it. Y'all, these were my notes when I was playing color analyst. As soon as that whistle blew in that 90th minute, I had a trash can sitting next to me. My play-by-play, she looked at me. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "You have no idea how angry I am. I don't know if it's my hormones or me just being angry that this team is it's just not it." And you look at the history of Chicago Stars, they've been just such a phenomenal club, but it doesn't get any worse than this. And things need to change. So I just don't see them doing much this weekend. I just don't.
Listen, you're speaking from a place of experience and passion, because you represented that club at one point in your own personal history. So I get it. I mean, I'm a Chicago native, born and raised. I always want the professional teams here to do well. It's been tough cookies for sure to start for them, and I don't think it's unfair some of the points that you're bringing up. Maybe expand that a little bit for me on my end. I mean, if you're asking questions of leadership, I think you include like the executive roles in that as well. I mean, their general manager has gone on record is doing speaking tours and saying how they want to build for sustainability. You know, that they want to have like a 5-year plan. Well, this is year 2 of that plan, and it ain't looking too good. And then on top of that, this is going to be away. It's going to be difficult for them to kind of cultivate that, because Bay FC, even though they're just in year 2 of their own existence in NWSL, they've already got like really invested fan base. I mean, we even saw that translate during the international window with the US Brazil game at PayPal Park. Jen, you're going to have a role in this game as well, analyzing it. What can you speak about to some of maybe even the expectations of the Bay FC fan base this early in its existence, and their support, and how that maybe plays a factor into games sometimes?
Oh man, Bay Area fans, whoa, where do I even start? It's ingrained in soccer, right? You got huge Stanford, Santa Clara, they've developed players beyond another level. And even seeing the leaders there, Brandy Chastain, Leslie Osborne, they're such a huge part of Bay FC and its identity. And seeing the way that the team rallied behind us, honestly, as an expansion team, was unbelievable. I'm so excited to go back this weekend and catch up with everyone. And the way that the fans get behind the team is really awesome. And I think that's a credit to what Bay FC's built in terms of culture and identity. And for sure, they'll be looking at this game as a 3-pointer, for sure. The way Chicago have kind of really struggled the opening few games, Bay FC will. I've got all the quality. I genuinely believe that to go and get 3 points, and I'm tipping Bay FC for this game for sure.
Awesome. I mean, look, we're going to find out. We are going to find out, and we're going to find out on Paramount Plus. Make sure you tune into our games of the week on Paramount Plus. We'll see. We'll revisit, and we'll see how wrong or incorrect or how correct we were when it comes to these type of games. You can never really, really predict NWSL in that fashion. That's all we've got for our previewing. Welcome back to the NWSL. Thank you for joining us on Golazo Network. For everyone joining us on YouTube, stick around. We've got a mailbag segment. Golazo Network, we love to see you and hate to say goodbye, but peace out. Stick with us after a quick break on YouTube. We are back with a mailbag segment. Shout out to our YouTube family joining us for this one. We wanted to make sure that we still keep the good vibes going, tapping into our community here. We've got a couple questions because we put out a call for the mailbag, and of course, you all have responded in turn. And so we kind of have a couple here. I'm going to take one. Jen's going to take one. Jess is going to take one. And let's have a little bit of fun. Jen, I'm going to go ahead and start things off with you here, because once we saw this question from Eagle971 about Arsenal, we knew where we had to go. What's your opinion on the Arsenal girls should focus on the upcoming season? What should they focus on? They need some silverware. Eagle971 wants to know, Beattie. What's your opinion on Arsenal? What do they got to focus on?
Yeah, man, they need some silverware. It's been a couple of seasons now. They started really disappointingly at the start. Obviously, Eidevall leaving the club after a really difficult spell. But for me, where it's dipped, and I feel like they'll look at the FA Cup as a big miss. And for me, it was they weren't able to adapt their game based on they're so used to playing at the Emirates now in this beautiful pitch and stunning atmosphere, best fans. When you go to Bournemouth, it's a little bit different. And they tried to play their usual style of play football, beautiful, the Arsenal way, and got caught out a couple of times. And they'll know that. And this is a narrative that I'm sure has been said in the changing room, that they just needed to adapt their game a little bit more, whether it's going long, take the game to them. And it's just those games where if you're playing on a different surface, that's just like one small detail. But honestly, the way that they performed off the back of those first 4 opening games, I genuinely think they can take so much confidence going into next season. Silverware is coming, Arsenal fans. Don't worry, it's coming.
Patience. Are we preaching patience here for Arsenal, Jen?
Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's go for another question here. Defenders rule TS Fearless for Jess McDonald. Who's the number 1 player you never liked to play against? Shout out to Defenders Rule TS Fearless. I'm going to assume that's Taylor Swift. Fearless. Number 1 player you never liked to play against, Jess McDonald. You have a whole toolbox, probably. I'm sure you played against a lot of good players.
Yeah, when I saw this question, I'm like, dang, I mean, I can literally go from year 1 to year 13, different players, just a pain in my tail, but that's just compliment to them. But I would say the most consistent player who was the most difficult to play against, and I don't think this is going to shock anybody, but Becky Sauerbrunn, boy.
Yeah.
I try and pull everything out of my toolbox. I'm like, okay, I got some speed on her. I'm a turn. I don't turn. She takes the ball from me. Okay, 50-50. Okay, let me get my arm up a little bit, give a little contact. No, she's giving me contact. Like she's so smart. She's so smart. You know how frustrating that is for a striker when you're playing against such a smart defender. I mean, she's just so tenacious. She's so smart off the ball. Her leadership in the back can be intimidating. But she is probably one of the funnest to play against because she's very difficult to play against consistently. She just a pain, man. I hope she's listening too. You're a pain, Becky. That's a compliment, my friend. I love her, but she's just so savvy, honestly.
I love the shout out, Becky Sauerbrunn. Listen, it is a surprise to me because I think I'm sitting here thinking like you could literally name anybody over the course of your career. In any of those, I have a follow-up. Excuse me. Thank you, Defenders Rule, again for the question, because now it's sparked some of my own interest.
Ooh.
For all of the history that you have going up against players, was there ever a moment where there was a player that you felt like was just so difficult to go up against, maybe got the better of you, but because of that respect that comes after a battle like that in a game, was there ever a cool jersey swap that took place?
Oh, you know what? I've had a few, actually. I do have a list that kind of stand out. Some historically phenomenal female soccer players. I mean, I've got Christine Sinclair. We've had some jersey pools and then swap jerseys after a game.
Big.
Carly Lloyd. We've had some jersey pools against one another. I have her.
You're dropping names.
I'll just see this collection. One day I'm going to show it off, okay? So everyone can see it. I've got Meg Rapinoe, but my favorite, the GOAT. And she always gave me this compliment. She's like, you run too much. I hate that you run too much. And she said this to me after every game I ever played against her. Marta.
I love it.
got marked in Jersey
you
too.
run too much McDonald.
She always told me that after every game. You run too much. You know, she put her hand on my shoulder. She'd be breathing hard. You run too much.
just casual kits.
Yeah.
Casual kits you're dropping here. Just Carly Lloyd, Christine Sinclair, the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Very average.
Like just casual names. I'm so glad I asked. I don't know what I was expecting, but I shouldn't. That's the one I shouldn't be surprised about. The fact that you have the kits of those players. Oh my goodness. Okay, I like this one. Shout out to Naomi Say, SEI. I'm going to assume that I'm saying that correctly. Naomi Say asked, can you meet and speak with Hayes about how to win against tough opponents like Brazil, Japan, and China? So this is an interesting question for me because I wasn't too sure like which direction to take this question because there's the coverage part of my brain that's like, oh, like I've spoken with Emma Hayes. Like she does availabilities. We've had some one-on-ones and then the opponents here with Brazil, Japan, these are teams that they just played and they've got China on the horizon. So I was thinking, geez, I was like, if I had a chance to speak with Emma Hayes, maybe just even like outside, let's just expand the question, like outside of what is a typical work professional setting, whether it's media availabilities or virtual one-on-ones or anything like that. What would it look like and how what would I ask Emma Hayes about? I gotta say, I think I would invite her back to the city of Chicago because God bless Emma Hayes. She's also someone who's been very transparent and shared some vulnerable things in her experiences. And Chicago wasn't exactly one of those places where she had the best coaching experiences, despite her affinity for the big city in the Midwest. So I'd like to invite her back. I think I'd invite her back to Chicago, no pressure, just good vibes. Like we're just going to talk ball. Like, let's just chat ball a little bit, maybe, take her to go get some real pizza, not the deep dish. We're going to get her some Chicago Tavern, thin crust, cutting squares, have a good time. And look, we could split the check, we don't have to worry about that, pitcher of pop, pitcher of beer, whatever you want. Like we'll talk about it, but we're definitely going to talk about for sure how to win against tough opponents like Brazil and Japan and China. I'm very curious about the game in front of them for China because they've got these games against these other teams already in Brazil and Japan. And she's been a little bit vocal about that already. They were two very different teams that presented a number of challenges for the United States. Despite the U.S. getting one win against Brazil, Japan absolutely handed it to them in the She Believes Cup. Brazil matches were supposed to be a little bit of a response to that, and we got some of it. But I think it's also the timing in which some of these games are taking place. I mean, Hayes has been pretty clear what this year is going to be for this U.S. program. It is meant to be a time of experimentation, a time of player pool expansion. My goodness, we're having questions out of these windows about a goalkeeping position. Who's going to be that starter? I mean, these are big questions. These aren't just like small sub questions. They're huge questions coming in and out of this window. And these games, these opponents are being utilized to try to find those answers. So I think there's going to be a little bit of continuity here. There's still going to be these moments of experimentation, and there might even be some results that end in draws or end in losses because there are answers that are being searched for within these matches. And I think eventually, though, that window is going to narrow itself down, and they're really going to have to nail down those answers. So I think I'm curious in the games out of Brazil and Japan, if maybe now at this midway point of the year, because they're going to fall between late May and June, if this is the next window will be the window to finally maybe kind of place those emphasis on tactical things versus cohesiveness and chemistry and things like that. So tavern style pizza, pitcher of whatever you like, and tactics. Come on through, Emma Hayes. We've got another Hayes question. So let's I'm going to pitch this one to the two of you though. We've got a question from Cat Laz, 2 Z's. Do you think Hayes is hurting newer players by playing them all together? No, don't everyone just jump at the bit of this question at once. Jen, I'm curious because again, like how I kind of took my Hayes question in a different direction. Like this is a short enough question where it's like it can maybe still go a number of different ways. What is your take on it?
Yeah, look, and first of all, I see your game over there, by the way, trying to play the friendly card, take atmosphere, and
Tell
then
me all your secrets.
hit him with the analysis. Yeah, I was like, wow, guard would be down. I'd be like, yeah, hit with the analysis.
I'm sincere. I mean it sincerely.
Is she hurting the younger players? No, I think, I get why that question, where it's coming from, in terms of it's a lot of inexperience on the field at the one time, and that's difficult to step into. As a young player stepping into that situation, you look towards your older players, you look towards your leaders. Normally, you're one of the few younger players in that situation, so I do get it. But I think honestly, I admire her as a manager, and I think she would have managed those situations really well with making that the theme of the camp, that's what it was about. She was so vocal that that's what she was trying to do, with give as much experience to younger players as possible. And I don't think at the end of the day, players need to be tested, right? Players need to be thrown in at the deep end and really seeing who can survive and perform. And I think you're spot on with what you just said, Sandra, in the sense of that was the theme of that camp. Can they move towards, she'll be analyzing that down to a T, with who did what at what phase of the game, who coped well under pressure, and moving that into, right, who's going to be my strongest 11, strongest squad moving into the next camp tactically. I think she'll have been putting into place principles of how to play, methodology, style of how she wants this national team to play, who adapted well to it in the deep end. And I think it doesn't get as much bigger of a test playing at the SoFi Stadium against Brazil, young players coming into it, double headers against top teams. So it's really, I don't think she's hurting them in that sense. I think any young player would lap up any opportunity, regardless of who they're on the field with, whether it's all the experienced players or anyone. You just want to play for your country. You want the experience. You want the time on the pitch to go and prove yourself. And I think that's the kind of mentality that playing for the US national team breeds, right? I don't need to tell you guys that. Like you know that down to a T. So I think any player would have lapped that up, and I think thrived in that opportunity.
Jen, cosign, or do you think anything differently? Do you think maybe this is just fine with what's occurring during 2025 with the U.S. program?
Was that to Jess or to me? Sorry.
To Jess.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Jen.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, this is fine. There's no major tournaments right now. She just came off of winning the Olympics. People calm down. We're hitting a reset button. Next major tournament is in 2 years. I think time for panic is maybe towards the end of 2026, and we're still questioning. But right now, she's giving opportunity. I don't, seriously.
By then,
she's giving opportunity. And opportunity is good for these young players because they're going to be older, obviously, when the World Cup comes about. So they're going to have more experience and things like that. So she's getting players their caps, especially while some of the veterans are out. I mean, Roosevelt, Sophia Wilson, Mallory Swanson, there's still a core of players that are still going to be there. But at the end of the day, this is fine. This is fine. This isn't a major tournament. There's not a huge chip right now. There's nothing to prove yet until when it gets down to the nitty gritty.
I just wanted to read a quick comment a question in the comment section, which was funny. It said, Jen, will you be at the long bar at Bay FC for research purposes? And yes, I absolutely will. I can't wait.
Let's go. Get it in. Bay FC, Chicago Stars. Say hello to Jen B. And honestly, say hello for me too. Give Jen a hug for me because I'm not going to be at that game. But tell her to give her a hug from Sandra. But we gotta. It's been so much fun. And now we gotta say goodbye, and that's why I'm like, give Jen a hug. But this has been a blast. It's always lovely to work alongside the two of you. NWSL is back. We're so happy to see its return. Attacking Third will also return this Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to discuss all of our biggest takeaways from week 4 across the league. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Attacking Third everywhere you can. Watch us on Golazo Network and YouTube. For Sandra Herrera, our producer Mark, Jess McDonald, Jen Beattie, this was Attacking Third. Thanks for being here.